Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Bill Cosby tries to get his conviction for sexual assault overturned. We speak to attorney Gloria Allred on how his accusers feel about the appeal.
And questions still surround the death of actress Brittany Murphy 11 years after her passing. Renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Weck weighs in.
Plus, jailhouse staff tracking an inmate's movement in the ceiling. How teens attempted a wild escape. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. Convicted sex offender and former actor and comedian Bill Cosby is attempting to overturn his conviction. Cosby's attorneys argued before the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court that he didn't receive a fair trial. The 83-year-old is serving 3 to 10 year sentence at a state prison. He was convicted of 3 counts of sexually assaulting Andrea Constant in 2004. The key issue for appeal is the trial judge's decision to allow other accusers to testify about uncharged prior bad acts by Cosby. The judge is expected to reach a decision at a later date. Attorney Gloria Allred represents 33 of the accusers and joins me here now. Thank you for joining us today, Gloria.
Thank you for inviting me, Brian.
Now, Gloria, as I said, you represent 3 of the uncharged bad act witnesses, Janice Kinley, Lise Lubin, and Shalom Lashin. And a large part of what we heard today in the hearing was the judge deciding whether or not these witnesses should have testified at this second trial. What are your responses to those arguments?
Yes, and you just showed Janice in the single shot. And I did represent all 3. They were the majority of the prior bad act witnesses in the second criminal case. Also represented, and that's Lise Lublin. I also represented the only one of the prior bad act witness who was allowed to testify in the first criminal case against Mr. Cosby. And that was a case in which there was a mistrial because the jury was split. They couldn't decide whether Mr. Cosby should be found guilty or should be acquitted. So there was a mistrial, but the prosecution refiled the case. And the second time, the judge, the same judge, who had allowed only 1 prior bad act witness in the first case, allowed 5 in the second case. I think the argument this morning was obviously very important. The test, Brian, always is the admission of the testimony more probative than prejudicial, or is it more prejudicial than probative? Of course, the defense argued that it was more prejudicial than probative. Of course, all evidence that is presented by the prosecution against the defendant is always prejudicial to some extent. In other words, it would tend to argue that there should be a conviction. But the prosecution argues here it was more probative than prejudicial, more likely to lead to the truth about what happened. And that is why they wanted to admit and did ask to have admitted the testimony of prior bad act witnesses. It was as a form of corroboration for Andrea Constant, who was the only victim for whom charges had been filed.
Yeah. Now, I know there's going to be I have a few more questions about the hearing today, but I kind of want to leap ahead a little bit. Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years 2 years ago, and there's a potential that he could be released as early as September 25th of 2021. What does this potential parole date mean for you as an attorney, but also the accusers and victims that you represent?
Well, I mean, the question is he going to be released or not? I think he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years, so he's eligible for parole on the date that you mentioned, or at sometime in 2021. However, he has consistently said he feels no remorse. He's not essentially taking any responsibility because he says he's innocent of what he was convicted of, 3 counts of aggravated indecent sexual assault. So whether, if he's showing no remorse, whether the parole board will in fact grant him parole, I don't know. I think my client just wants justice to be done. So we'll have to see what form justice takes, if any.
And I'm assuming you heard some of the arguments this morning between both sides. What are some of your reactions, perhaps, to the defense attorneys representing Bill Cosby and how they articulated or colored the second trial?
Of course, one of their arguments, Brian, is that allowing 5 prior bad act witnesses to testify is in a sense asking that there be 5 mini trials. And that, of course, the acts that were testified to by these 5 other prior bad act witnesses, they were not, they were not reported to law enforcement, the defense argues. And so that they're more prejudicial than probative. But of course, the prosecution would argue that, yes, that's true, they weren't reported to law enforcement, but they did tell others about it. Maybe it was a family member, maybe it was a friend. And anyway, the prosecution argues, look, it's important on the issue of consent, absence of mistake. And that means that they wanted to prove that Cosby, who they argued said that Andrea consented to drugging or sexual assaulting, and so it wasn't sexual assault according to Cosby's team, that she consented, that by showing the testimony, allowing the testimony of prior bad act witnesses, it shows that Mr. Cosby was not mistaken about whether Andrea consented. Because look at the testimony of the prior bad act witnesses. If he is drugging and sexually assaulting other women, he knows that if a woman is incapacitated by alcohol or drugs, she can't consent. He's not mistaken about it. He's doing it so that they can't reject him. In other words, not consent or consent. They're incapacitated. And that is why they wanted to show it. That, and of course, because they want to prove a common plan, scheme, or design that Mr. Cosby had.
Yeah, and you're giving us like basically a law school exam here, because that's when you're allowed to use this type of evidence for motive, identity, common scheme and plan. So Gloria Allred, I want to thank you very much for lending us your time and coming on with us to break this down. And I wish you all the best of luck and happy holidays going forward.
And you too, Brian, and to all your viewers. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for our own in-depth analysis on the case. Joining us now is Terri Austin. Terri, a state appellate court already turned down Cosby's legal team's objections. Is this hearing, in your eyes, a bit of a long shot?
I think it is, and I'm hoping it is actually. And I think that, Ms. Allred really broke it down for us in terms of use of the prior bad acts. I think it is showing a scheme and a plan, the fact that he drugged these women. But I think the other issue here that they argued was the fact that this deposition, and this concerns me a little bit more, was used, and he was told that it wouldn't be used against him. So maybe his constitutional rights were violated. So that's an issue I think we need to keep an eye on as far as this appeal is concerned.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. When I listen to the hearing, I get it. I hear the arguments, but this final piece of whether or not it was a mistake that could be overrun by the fact that there is so much evidence against him, I think that might be something that the state finds themselves successful here. Thank you very much for that, Terri. And to you guys, still ahead on the Law and Crime Daily, wild courtroom moments and a dramatic jailhouse video. Season 3 of Court Cam is premiering on the A&E networks, and we have an inside look. And the sudden death of actress Brittany Murphy is still puzzling investigators. What one forensic expert has to say about the case. Next. This month will mark 11 years since actress Brittany Murphy died at the age of 32. A podcast looked at the case recently. Angenette Levy is here with what a legendary forensic pathologist is saying about her untimely death. Angenette?
Yeah, Brian, the deaths of Brittany Murphy and her husband just 5 months apart has sparked a lot of speculation over the years. A new episode of the podcast Red Carpet Rendezvous looks to clear up some of that. Now, autopsies conducted on Brittany Murphy and her husband revealed that both died from pneumonia and an overdose of cough medicines. Simon Monjack's mother wants more answers about what led to her son and daughter-in-law dying at such a young age. Testing of Murphy's hair showed it contained several metals, which has led to internet speculation that she may have been poisoned. Lauren Conlon interviewed Dr. Cyril Wecht about the deaths. He re-examined them.
He does believe that it was pneumonia and it was neglect, because he made it very clear to me that the type of pneumonia that Brittany and Simon both had, you take an antibiotic and it's treatable and then you're good to go. So you know, it's a mystery why nobody went to the doctor to take care of this.
Now, Dr. Wecht said he actually reviewed these deaths and the cases associated with them because Brittany Murphy's father contacted him and wondered why his daughter's hair contained so many different types of metal. Dr. Wecht said that could have actually come from hair dye, and he does not believe that Brittany Murphy was poisoned.
There were multiple metals found in the hair. Number one, if you're going to poison somebody, why would you have to use 4 or 5 or 6 different metals? If you're going to do it, you'll choose one. Number two, if for some reason you decided that you wanted to use multiple levels, where would you get them? Number three, these levels in the hair indicated that they had been there for a while. Things do not grow out in the hair immediately. It takes time. And therefore, if she had been poisoned, then we would have seen manifestations of that previously.
Now, Dr. Wecht is pretty critical of Brittany Murphy's mother, Sharon Murphy. He says that she had a duty to seek some type of medical care for her daughter. The home that they were all living in has been described as filthy, and Brittany Murphy was malnourished.
Remember, the whole thing there, as I recall, they had multiple security posts and guards and signals and signs, and electronic things and so on. These people were, they were meshuggah, that wonderful Jewish word. They were crazy,
They're crazy.
They're crazy, and that's the way they live.
And Dr. Wecht says that Simon Monjack also had a duty to seek medical care for his wife. Brian?
Angenette, so what's Sharon Murphy's explanation for this?
We would really like to know. Sharon Murphy has not spoken publicly about her daughter's death and the death of Simon Monjack in many years. She also said back in 2013 in The Hollywood Reporter, there was an editorial that she wrote, and she said that any claim that her daughter was murdered was absolutely ridiculous. She believed that Brittany Murphy's father was trying to profit off of this theory. We don't know exactly what Sharon Murphy would say about all of this today. We know there was a lot of prescription drug use going on in that home. We don't know if that contributed to her lack of action with her daughter's health. I've reached out to Sharon Murphy, or at least attempted to do so, and have not been able to reach her.
All right, thanks, Angenette. We'll make sure to keep an eye on that for any upcoming developments. And for a legal analysis on the case, Terri Austin joins me. Terri, there's a lot of things going around in this case, but there's no actual criminal charges. As an attorney, what are we to look for to begin this criminal investigation, or maybe even charges?
Well, Brian, first of all, evidence. We need evidence. This case is really missing, I think, some key evidence. We don't have anything to say that there was a crime. I do think there was a crime, to tell you the truth, because I don't believe in, coincidences. But here they're going to have to find some forensic evidence to say that it was really tied back to Sharon, the mother, or anybody else for that matter, because it does seem like, to me, this was maybe, the mold in the house or pneumonia, but it is very odd.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke, but it seems we're still trying to find that fire, it appears. And as the saying goes, where there is smoke, there's often fire, but we'll have to wait till see. Thanks, Terri. And after the break, we take you inside the Ohio courtroom of a murder trial involving a fake pizza order. Did the jury get it right? Plus, a daring escape and how the fleeing suspects were caught. The video you don't want to miss after this. Welcome back. Trust me, I know teens can be, let's say, adventurous, sure. But ones at a Nashville detention center planned an especially daring escape. Law&Crime founder and host of the TV show Court Cam has the video.
First, we go to the Juvenile Justice Center in Nashville, Tennessee. It's after 9 p.m. 4 teens, aged 15 to 17, have been left unsupervised while on a work detail, off camera in the basement of the building. As minors, these boys are staying here instead of jail while they await trial for crimes including armed robbery, auto theft, and murder. And as you can see, they don't plan on sticking around for their trials. They've just come up a basement elevator and are wearing what appear to be yellow security vests. While one of the young men begins making his way down the hall, he changes his mind and follows the others up the stairs. When they get to the ground floor, the teens bolt through the front entrance. No one's stopping them. Cameras catch the entire escape. For now, they've made it and run off into the night. Eventually, all four involved in the escape were caught and could now face additional charges. It's later discovered that the four teens likely had help from the inside. 2 employees are terminated and arrested for assisting the juveniles in their escape. And this wasn't the first time a juvenile tried to escape this exact same juvenile facility. We go back just 2 years earlier. And these staff members have been tracking a teen as he makes his way through the ceiling, just a few feet above their heads. Though he's just out of reach, the ceiling begins to give way. The ceiling doesn't hold, and the defendant crashes through. Security's not giving up and immediately surround him, as his daring, though poorly planned escape comes to an end. Watch again as the juvenile makes one last effort to flee, but security's taking no chances of letting him escape again. He's unhurt and immediately taken back into custody. After this incident and the most recent escape, the city of Nashville is considering taking over operations of the privately run center.
I think it might be time to find someone else to run those detention centers. But when we come back, an ex-husband says his former wife is guilty, but he's already the one behind bars. We're giving you a closer look into an Ohio trial. Did this woman get away with murder for 7 years? An Ohio man in the middle of a deadly love triangle is pointing the finger at his ex-wife for killing his ex-girlfriend. Chad Cobb pled guilty to murdering Ashley Biggs, a retired Army veteran and pizza delivery driver. Biggs was found dead in her car in a cornfield. Cobb later implicated Erica Stefanko, who divorced him after his arrest. Cobb claims Stefanko placed a fake pizza order at Domino's to lure Biggs to her death. Cobb says that he was outside next to a tree and watched as Biggs pulled up to where they were waiting.
With everything that was going on, looking back, she wasn't happy to see me, that's for certain.
What did you do with Ashley's body?
When I had to leave, I picked her up and put her in the car.
Whose car?
Ashley's car, in the back seat.
And when you put her in the back seat, did she have anything on her that was placed on her that she didn't have on her when she arrived?
Yes, there was. A zip tie.
How many?
I only remember one. I remember one around her neck.
On cross-examination, Cobb insisted he's not the killer.
Was Ashley in her car when I drove it to our bridge in the field?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Was Ashley already dead?
Yes, sir.
Did you strangle her?
I am not the one that strangled her, sir.
I see. So now you pled guilty, and now you're saying that you didn't kill her. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You drove the car to the far end of a cornfield, correct?
Yes, sir.
That cornfield was pretty far off the road, true?
Yes, sir. I don't know how far, but decent walk.
The defense pointed out that Cobb only implicated Stefanko after she filed for divorce from him, leaving him for his friend and former boss.
Sir, at the time and still currently, I'm under a life sentence, so them getting married is really neither here nor there. I mean, one part.
Did you and Erica ever plan to kill Ashley Biggs?
No, sir.
At your sentencing, when Judge Jones asked you if you had anything to say, did you say anything about Erica?
I told the judge that there's a lot that I need to say about this, but there's very little that I can.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you specifically, at sentencing.
Terry, appeals are always a possibility. Do you see a possible issue here in Chad Cobb's testimony?
I don't. I think he contradicted himself, but as you know, the potential grounds for appeal are legal error, jury misconduct, or ineffective assistance of counsel, and that does not exist here.
Yeah, I could see that here as well. But broader than that, just quickly, any other appeal issues other than just Chad Cobb?
Yeah, I mean, I think the jury is confused by Chad Cobb's testimony because the fact that, you know, he in fact said he did kill and then he said he didn't. But no, I don't think there's any appealable grounds. And I think the jury came out with the right decision here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Of course, Erica Stefanko was found guilty of the same charges as her ex, Chad Cobb. All we're waiting for now is the sentence. If you remember, the death penalty is not on the table, so potentially life or life without the possibility of parole. Terry, as always, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us here on the Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.